So the United States is deploying an aircraft carrier to the Middle East that could be used in strikes against Iran as the regime there continues its brutal crackdown on protesters across the country. I mean, this is historic. The Islamic Republic of Iran has never been this fragile in its 46-year existence, and this weekend could be the move. Strike assets are moving into theater, and we know President Trump prefers taking military action outside of market hours. Now, Fox News is reporting, quote, at least one U.S. aircraft carrier is being moved towards the Middle East as tensions with Iran continue to build, military sources confirmed to Fox News. They note that transit to the region is expected to take at least a week, and this was as of reporting 2 days ago. The Hill says that it appears to be the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, as well as its strike group, that were spotted moving west through the Indo-Pacific. Fox says U.S. military assets from air, land, and sea are expected to flow into the region in the coming days and weeks to provide the president with military options should he decide to carry out these strikes. The source said U.S. military planners are preparing a wide range of options that would depend on how Iran's regime acts in the coming days. Now, it looked like these strikes were about to begin a couple nights ago. We got reports of jets being heard over western Iraq, a notable strike path that the U.S. and Israel have taken into Iran just in recent months. The U.S. seemingly evacuated El Udeid Air Base in Qatar, at least removed civilians from that area. We got a notification from Qatar that something like that was taking place, and it looked like airspace was shut down over most of western Iran. That all of that kind of leans towards the strike getting ready to happen. But it didn't. And some indications right now are that some of our allies in the Middle East kind of talked President Trump down, and those strikes may have actually been ready to occur. The Financial Times reports, quote, intense diplomatic efforts to dissuade Donald Trump from striking Iran, including communication between the Islamic Republic and the U.S. administration, have de-escalated tensions in the Gulf, according to 3 people close to governments in the region. They say countries including Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt have been urging restraint from the White House, warning of the potential damage to Iran's neighbors in the event of a U.S. strike on the regime, including higher global oil and gas prices. One Arab official said, quote, things have de-escalated for now. The U.S. is giving time for talks with Iran to see where they go from here. And a New York Times piece added Israel to that list, saying that Netanyahu also asked President Trump to postpone, in that case, so they could fully prepare for an Iranian retaliation. Now, this one's a little messy, right? Like some of these countries, Saudi Arabia is no friend of Iran, not by a long shot. So why are they trying to talk President Trump off the ledge from carrying out strikes that could destabilize or help to overthrow the Iranian regime? And there's a lot of different rationale here. One is, of course, it would likely extend a war into their neck of the woods, right? All these countries are right there. And if missiles start flying out of Iran, be it at American bases in some of these countries or Israel, it's Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, Oman, and Egypt that are going to be right in the middle of those strikes. So that's understandable. Another argument I've heard recently is there's not necessarily a lot of confidence that the United States is going to be there to assist with this long term. When we did move an aircraft carrier out of the region to build up operations in the Caribbean recently, that's the reason that we're having to relocate one now into the Middle East if we want to carry out these strikes. And some of these countries might view it as the U.S. is not going to be here for the aftermath. So if these strikes are carried out, it's going to be entirely on them, the countries in the region there, to help stand up a future Iranian government. Just, again, full speculation there, but it is notable that we've got some adversaries of Iran seemingly pushing back on the U.S. carrying out these strikes. Now, it's worth watching this weekend to see if anything plays out, because we know that President Trump prefers, when given the option, to take military action outside of market hours. And Monday, I believe the markets are closed as well. So 3-day weekend, we might see Tehran go boom here in the next couple days. I mean, historically, if you look at the major military actions that President Trump has taken between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we've got the killing of Qasem Soleimani in Iraq back in 2020. Trump began striking the Houthis again after a long break, like a 4 or 5 month break where the Houthis were not hit in Yemen. Restarted that campaign on a weekend. He hit the Iranian nuclear facilities on a weekend, and just a couple weeks ago, grabbed Maduro down in Venezuela on a weekend. So if you're the Iranian regime, maybe watch out, look overhead, or don't, actually, for that matter, here in the coming days. This weekend could be when the United States and maybe other allies decide to take action and step in to assist the protesters. Now, in terms of what those actions could be, pretty wide ranging. Of course, the first and most kind of discussed here is the kinetic action, taking military strikes against the regime headquarters, maybe facilities, maybe even leadership figures. You have to remember that at the end of the 12-day war, President Trump called off the last wave of Israeli strikes, said we're going to try to talk our way through this, and then of course the U.S. actually hit the nuclear facilities. But at the very end of that, Israel was beginning to go after some of these secret police, some of the internal police forces in Iran. We know those target sets have been built up. And quite frankly, if Israel, the United States, and others have the physical location, like at all times, of some of these Iranian nuclear scientists and senior leaders across the Iranian government, you have to imagine they've got the ability and the means to go after some of these secret police and IRGC headquarters that are right now brutally putting down the protests. When we get into the cyber realm, we can get pretty creative here. There's a lot of different things that could be done. For one, the U.S. could assist in just shutting down regime communications, making it impossible, or at least very, very, very difficult for the regime to communicate with their offices around the country, making command and control pretty challenging. We've got the doxing of regime and secret police officials. So you'll see a lot of these guys are running around with masks. They do not want their identities to be shown. In many cases, they live in and around the people that they're cracking down upon. They don't want their names known. They don't want their faces seen. They certainly don't want their home addresses and their family members listed. Again, have to assume that between the United States and Israel, that information is available. That could be leaked to the protesters and possibly cause some of these secret police and regime forces to back down and maybe not go out and try to crack down on the protesters. Another one here in the cyber realm, of course, is trying to find a way to open internet access so more people in Iran can actually get their stories out and explain what is happening on the ground. And I should note that we've now passed 7 full days of the internet being shut off inside of Iran, and we are getting less and less information from the protesters by the day. We do still have some pretty shocking accounts coming out from the ground, but it is a noticeable change. Every single day, less information coming out from the Iranian citizens. Now, in response to, or kind of a precursor to, these possible U.S. strikes, Iran has started threatening the United States. We've got a senior IRGC general, Mohsen Rezai, said, quote, "Trump has said that his hand is on the trigger. We will cut off his hand and his finger. You do not pay attention to the restraint and strategic patience that we have shown. Stop right now, step back. Otherwise, none of your bases in the region will be safe." And while we're not hearing a lot from the protesters, we have heard more in recent days from the Iranian government, namely government officials aimed at reaching U.S. population and U.S. President Trump. Their foreign minister was on Fox News just a couple days ago, and for one, kind of keeping with those threats, he said in a message to President Trump, "Don't fail again. You failed in June. You destroyed the facilities, but you can't destroy the technology. You can't destroy the grit and the determination of the Iranian people to keep moving forward. So, President Trump, don't fail again," was his message. But he went on with a couple directions here that I thought were worth sharing to give you an idea of how the regime is presenting some of this. First off, he says, hey, look, these aren't protesters, these are terrorists. And what you're seeing play out are the brave Iranian regime law enforcement officials coming under direct fire and killing these terrorists that are in our streets. Here's the first clip.
And we've seen the video of body bags stacking up. You are saying that all of this is because you're not in control of your country and foreign elements are killing people inside your country?
No, I'm telling you that it was a fighting between our security forces and terrorist elements who had a plan to create a big number of killings in order to provoke President Trump to enter into this conflict and start a new war against Iran. And that was exactly an Israeli plot. The footages that you mentioned have not been seen in Iran. I have to tell you that a misinformation campaign is going on at the same time.
And you're suggesting that it's Israel and Mossad acting like Iranian forces, shooting the Iranian people to make casualties to spur on the action of President Trump. I'm just saying there's a lot of people that don't believe that, Mr. Foreign Minister.
No, Mossad has already confessed that.
They may be on the ground, sir, but as far as them killing hundreds and hundreds of people to make it look like you did, it does not appear in the video that we get out that this is a full level of calm. It appears that protests continue in a number of different cities.
Now, I think Bret Baier actually pushed back a fair amount throughout this interview. We've just got a couple different clips here, but kind of saying, are you really trying to convince us that all of these people are Israeli and American agents on the street shooting protesters. That's the argument that Iran is making right now. Now, on top of that, he was pushed about the casualty counts with Brett Baer saying, hey, we've seen pictures of these body bags. We've heard estimates well into the thousands. What do you have to say to that? And from the Iranian foreign minister, this is his view right now on the total number of Iranians killed so far in these protests.
Well, we are on the ground in Iran. Those, claims are baseless. There is no proof of that. The number of deaths, although they tried hard to increase the number of deaths, are only hundreds. The exact figure would be announced very soon, perhaps tonight, by our authorities.
So you're saying it's less than 1,000 people?
No, hundreds of people. I certainly, deny the numbers and figures they have said. It is an exaggeration. It is a misinformation campaign only to find excuses to do another aggression against Iran. I can tell you that now it is 4 days that everything is calm. There is no demonstration. There is no unrest, nothing in Iran for the past 4 days.
So again, there's not a lot of reason to believe what the Iranian regime is saying. However, I do feel like it's worth playing that to get an idea of the messaging that they are putting out. When you go by the first-person accounts and the pictures and the videos coming out of Tehran in recent days, it is hard to imagine that what the foreign minister there is saying is very close to reality. Now, there's a little bit of confusion here in recent days as President Trump, seemingly out of nowhere at a press conference, said, "Good news, everyone. The killing has stopped. The regime has stopped going after the protesters."
We've been told that the killing in Iran is stopping. It's stopped. It's stopping. And there's no plan for executions or an execution or executions. So I've been told that on good authority. We'll find out about it.
Now, I don't think anyone was really expecting to see that. In fact, the Associated Press ran an article, quote, President Trump made a vague statement Wednesday that he's been told on good authority that plans for executions in Iran have stopped, even as Tehran has indicated fast trials and executions ahead in its crackdown on protesters. And they cited in a previous article the Iranian judiciary chief saying that the government should press ahead with rapid trials and executions. Again, very hard to get information off the ground right now, and more every day that goes by, we are having to rely almost exclusively on official Iranian regime accounts of what's happening. Something tells me that if they are continuing the crackdown against the citizens, they're not going to say it. I mean, we just listened to their foreign minister. They called everyone in the street terrorists, and this is simply the government putting down an uprising by armed terrorist factions. Like, come on. That doesn't line up with what we're seeing. Even the videos coming out of protesters before the full crackdown went into place. And there was yesterday, or just earlier today, Steve Witkoff, the U.S. Special Envoy to everything around the world at this point, talked about what's needed from the regime. And it shifted all of a sudden to where we have the ability right now to possibly assist in the overthrow of the Iranian regime. And to quote, I think it was Benem Ben Taliblu on Generation Jihad a couple days ago. If it wasn't him, my apologies. It seems like something he would say. The quote was that the Iranian regime policies are not the problem. The Iranian regime is the problem. So we can negotiate day and night about these different levels of enrichment and how many missiles they can have and how they're going to support their proxies. We've done all of that before, and we are still in this same place. But that does seem to be the direction, at least possibly, the administration is taking it right now. Steve Witkoff earlier today said, quote, there are 4 issues: nuclear enrichment, missiles, the actual material that they have, which is roughly 2,000 kilograms, which is enriched anywhere between 3.67% and 60%, and the proxies, of course. Those are problems. Yes, but again, I think the overarching issue here is the Iranian regime. Remove the regime, those things no longer become major issues. Now, part of the reason there was some pushback here just yesterday to President Trump's statement is a couple days ago, he said, quote, Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions, save the names of killers and abusers, help is on its way. And this message seemingly made it to some in Iran. We got some quotes here from the Crown Prince Pahlavi trying to relay that information as well, saying, you have support coming. Quote, my compatriots, as I told you in my previous message, the world not only saw and heard your courage and voice, but is taking action. By now, you have undoubtedly heard the message from the President of the United States. Help is on the way. Continue the struggle. Do not let this regime portray the situation as normal. After all of this killing, there is an ocean of blood between us and this regime. Write down the names of these criminals. One day they will face justice for their actions. And I have a special message for the military personnel. You are the national army of Iran, not the army of the Islamic Republic. It is your duty to protect the lives of your fellow compatriots. You do not have much time left. Join the people as soon as possible. To that end, we are seeing that the idea and the hope that somebody might step in to assist the protesters is putting people in the streets and risking their lives, and for many of them, giving their lives. A direct account we have relayed in Iran Wire was from a doctor based in Tehran who said, quote, by midnight Thursday, and this was last week Thursday, the wounds changed. It was live ammunition. It was as if they had ordered to treat it like a war zone, to shoot everyone. Talking about casualties, he said no one has an exact count. If a hospital that usually sees one death every 24 hours sees 8 in a single night, the death toll of 2,000 that has been cited is likely a gross underestimate. He added that security agencies, and think about how horrific this is, security agencies has already issued directives to hospitals to flag anyone admitted with unrest-related injuries. And we've talked about this before. So people that go out in the street, whether it's anything, they get shot or they in some way, shape, or form get hurt and need medical treatment, they know that by going to the hospital, they might be handing themselves over to regime authorities that, as we've seen in recent days, are executing and arresting prisoners across the country. Now, the reports in recent days, those that are continuing to get out, suggest that the protests have not stopped. And we keep using the term protest. I think more and more revolution is probably an appropriate term here. The regime is cracking. And when they crack, when their backs are against the wall, we see some of the worst brutality we can imagine. And that does appear to be what's playing out here over the course of the last couple days. Now, big picture, there is a lot of conversation that President Trump is simply trying to confuse the Iranians and say, we're not going to strike. It sounds like everything is working out okay. And while the Iranians, maybe the Iranian leadership, lets their guard down, that's when U.S. aircraft move in and Tomahawks fly in, and maybe even Israeli aircraft come in and take out some of the senior Iranian officials or offices or communications equipment that are being used to prop up this regime and put down the Iranian citizens. So if that is the case, and this is just a distraction right now, we should really keep an eye out for the next 3 days here. The night of January 16th here in the United States, 17th, 18th, January 16th today, then 17th, 18th, and 19th, given that markets are closed on Monday as well. But the window is closing here. These protesters are, they're going up against a very well-armed, very brutal regime. So if there's going to be any external help at all, in any way, shape, or form, there's not a lot of time left for the world to provide that. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.